Codenames was designed by Vlaada Chvátil and published by Czech Games Edition as a deduction party game where two teams consisting of a spy master and the rest consisting of teammates will be competing to see who can be the first to identify all of their agents without accidentally discovering the assassin. The spy master will pull this off by giving their teammates clues consisting of a single word and a number, which the number is related to how many words relate to the word that they have given as the clue. The teammates will then discuss and then guess which of the names played out in front of them they think belongs to their team. And if they guess right, they can keep guessing. But if they guess wrong, well, depending on what they guessed, they either just end their turn or they lose the game. Codenames is a game that I have heard plenty about. In fact, a lot of people seem to absolutely love this game. So much so that it has a whole pile of awards, including one of the biggest awards that you could get for a board game, the Spiel des Jahres, which it won in 2016. But that doesn't mean it's automatically a good game. There are some games that have won awards despite the fact that people view them as mediocre or just straight up bad. Do I think this is a good game? Do I think it deserves the Spiel des Jahres? Let's find out. I found a theme of what the game was going for, where two spy masters are trying to get their teammates to guess which agents belong to them by giving them words and numbers as clues to guess which one it is without uncovering the assassin, to be completely pasted on. Each team's turn consisted of the spy master giving a clue, say for example, land 3, and then the teammates just talk amongst each other for a minute, and then eventually one of them just points to a word that they think was right, and if they were right, they can keep guessing. They talk amongst each other for another minute, and then they point to another one. At no point in any of the games that I've played of this, whether I was the spy master or the teammates, did I ever really feel like I was a spy trying to figure out how to basically arrange these in such a way to get my teammates to guess words, or did I feel like I was trying to figure out who was who? I actually more felt like I was in English class being quizzed by being asked arbitrary questions to try and get me to pick the right word. Almost like I was in a game of Jeopardy rather than being a spy trying to deduct who's who. So in terms of being thematically connected, for me, the spy theme is really just a cover. I found the components for the game for the most part to be good, but not amazing. The tiles themselves to represent the two sides, the bystanders and the assassin, they work, but I do have two problems with it. First of all, the double agent tile to represent which side is going first is a little bit, to me at least, a little easy to mistake for which side it belongs to, since it has both teams' colors on both sides, one being the majority and then the other being just for the glasses. And I think it would have been a lot easier to basically just have one side just be one team's color and then the other side be the other team's, instead of just having one team's for the most of it and then one just for the glasses. I think it would have been easier to make it distinguishable by having it just be like one plain color for each side. It's not the biggest problem in the world. I just think it would have been easier to make it tell apart on who it belongs to and which team owns that tile. My bigger problem really is that there is pretty much no way to determine which cards belong to who apart from their colors, and I'm referring to the agents themselves. The bystanders are pretty easy to tell apart because the bystanders all just look like ordinary people. They don't have any glasses or anything like that, and obviously the assassin is easy to tell, but the agents themselves, they have of their own little characters. They have a female and male character model which works, except for the fact that there really is no way to tell which team they belong to apart from their pictures, because each of the pictures are significant to one side. And I think it would have been a lot better had they maybe included a little symbol to represent each team's color, kind of like what they did on the key cards, where they have a symbol to represent the Team Red's agents, Team Blue's agents, the assassin, and the bystanders, rather than just have it set to be color. So if you are colorblind, just keep in mind you may have a difficult time determining which team's colors, or rather which team's tiles, belong to you. That being said, the quality of the tiles are fine for what you're using them for. They are fairly thin, but you are only using them to place them onto the cards to signify which of them belong to which side. I think they could have been a bit better, but for what they're used for, I do think they work. A similar story goes in regards to the key cards or the layout cards that show where everything is, where the bystanders are, the agents, and the assassin. It makes it very clear who belongs to who by having each of the different boxes on the grid have a shape of some kind, whether it's a circle, a diamond, an X, or even just a blank, to determine where each of these belong to who. And if you are colorblind but you're playing as a spy master, I do think you'll still have a pretty good time trying to understand who belongs to who just by looking at the symbol. I also really like that they decided to have little dashes along the edges of each of the cards with one of the two teams' colors to determine who goes first. Although I would wish that they decided to put the shape, or the symbol rather, of each of the team's colors in the dashes as well, just to make it a little bit easier to see who is going first if you are colorblind. There's also a holder that comes with the game for the location cards that the card is supposed to just slide into, so that the spy masters can actually look at the card to see the positions out in the playing area without their teammates also being able to see it, and it works very well. The card itself slides in very well, and it holds its position very nicely so that you don't have to worry about it falling out if you were to accidentally knock it over, or maybe pick up the card to move it somewhere else. You don't have to worry too much about it just sliding out from underneath if you go to move it anywhere. Lastly, the timer I do think works very well. I have never run into a situation in the games that I've played where the timer got jammed up with sand and we had to tap it on the table a few times to get it to loosen again, or a situation to where maybe the timer was leaking somewhere and sand just kept falling out of the timer and basically just ruining the whole piece. Never had a situation like that before, thankfully. So overall, despite a few design choices that I personally would have made in regards to the edges of the layout card and the designs for the team tiles, I do think the components do work. In terms of how easy the game is to play, it is a very simple game. The Spy Master will give a one-word clue relating to at least one of the words in the grid, and then a number which relates to how many words in the grid that relate to that word, and then his teammates will make a guess. If they guessed right, they can keep guessing. If not, their turn's over, next team goes. First team to uncover all of their agents wins, and if somebody picks the assassin, their team loses. The rulebook I thought worked very well. It's simple in its description on how it plays out every round, giving a clue and then making contact, which is basically giving a guess when teams are supposed to go and how it ends. But it's detailed enough with what clues are considered valid and what aren't. In fact, the book has a whole section dedicated to talking about what's valid. Firm rules like the number you use can't be used as a clue. You can't say a visible word. You can't say part of a compound word until it's covered. So you couldn't say something like horse or snow for horseshoe or snowshoe. And it even talks about being able to be flexible with the clues that you can give in regards to depending on what kind of group you're playing with, in regard to something like homonyms or nouns, proper nouns, rhymes, compound words, acronyms, things like that. It tells you what to do if you gave an invalid clue. And it even has on the back of the book a nice guide to set up for playing with 2 or 3 players, which, full transparency, I have not played with 2 or 3, so I can't really comment on that. But overall, in regarding how easy the game is to play, I do think that it is very easy. I found the gameplay of the game to be either mildly enjoyable or fairly boring, depending on whether you've played as the spy master or the teammates, and depending on who you play with. I think that this game, at least for the teammates, relies heavily on being able to converse with each other, to try to work things out with each other, to come to the eventual conclusion of, we think this name belongs to us. And it is possible that if you are put into a group that may not be the most comfortable with discussing with other people, especially with people who they don't really know very well, then you may have some games where you are given a clue and then you'll just end up having your teammates look at each other, looking at the board, and then looking back at each other in just silence or just barely speaking. And whenever that happens, it can really slump to a bore. And that has happened to me in several of the games that I've played, where a clue will be given, and then I'll look at my teammates, and they're looking at each other silently, and they're looking at me silently, and no one's talking, or somebody will barely speak in something like, is it this one? I don't know. Well, maybe. And eventually, one of us just goes, point. I say all of that to drive home a point that I think playing this game as a teammate really does rely on being able to comfortably converse with other people to try to help drive out that feeling of, which one is this? Is this one really the one we're gonna pick? If this one is wrong, we could be helping them here. And if you aren't the most comfortable with conversing with other people, especially people you don't know, you really could run the risk of having the game as a teammate really slump. I do think that if you get a good group of people in and have a group of people that are comfortable with conversing with each other, then you could have that feeling of tension, that feeling of, which one should we try to go for? Should we try to go for this? I don't know. That might be a bit of a stretch. So it really does depend on the type of people that you are playing the game with that could end up impacting your ability to enjoy it, whether it's for good or for ill. Now, with all that said, I very much enjoyed playing this game as the Spy Master, as I actually did get feelings of tension and feelings of, these 3 names can all relate, but only 2 of these actually belong to us. What should I say to make them guess ours without guessing that one? Or should I play it safe and just do one name and make it obvious so that we can actually just progress? Can I stretch this in a way to maybe include this one other name to maybe give us a chance to leap ahead? But if I do that, can they pick up what I'm saying? Or am I pressing my luck a bit too much and they could end up guessing the assassin unintentionally? And that actually gave me feelings of enjoyment. That was a lot of fun. However, I've had games where the cards that relate to my team were completely unrelatable to each other. Even if by trying to stretch it out, I still couldn't find a way to include more than one name in a clue. So I've had games where it was just a game of house, 1. Food, 1. Thankfully, there is a saving grace to that, and that being the sheer amount of names, which I'll get to later when I talk about the replay value, that there are so many of them that I don't think that that problem will be run into very often. I'm also not sure on how well this scales. I've only ever played this game with 4 and 6. I have not tried it out with any of the other ones yet, but I do think 4 worked very well, And 6, like I said, if you play with the right group of people, then I think it can work. But that is a big capital I, capital F, if you play it with the right group. Overall, in terms of the gameplay, I enjoyed playing as one of the two sides, and that being the Spy Master. As for the teammates, it was either a mixed bag or a bore. And unfortunately, that's not the best thing for me, because for a team game with two different roles, I want to be able to enjoy playing as both roles for the team so that I could play the game without having a preference. And so far, for me, this game does not do that. When it comes to having replay value, there is plenty in the box, largely thanks to the abundant amount of codenames and the key cards. Let me start with the codenames first. You only use 25 of the codenames at a time, and there is so many codenames in the box that to see every single codename once would be you have to play through the game 16 times in order to get all of them. And then once you've gotten them all, you just shuffle them up and then go through the stack again for another 16 games. And then you could do that again and again and again. As for the key cards, there are 40 key cards in the game, and each of these cards has a set of 4 orientations, and each of those orientations can be used for a separate game. So to get through all 4 orientations of all 40 cards, it's gonna take you at least 160 games. So basically, every time you play this game, you're going to have a different set of keywords, or rather code names, that the Spy Master is going to be giving you clues to make you try to guess. And so in terms of the replay value, I will say it is massive. Overall, I was not blown away by this game, and I do not think it deserves the Spiel des Jahres, but that does not mean I think it's a bad game. I didn't find the theme to be there at all. The gameplay I did find to be enjoyable, but only when playing as the Spy Master. As, like I said, as playing as the teammates, it can either be a mixed bag or a complete bore, depending on who you play with. And keep in mind, because it does depend on who you play with, it could be that I maybe was just playing with the wrong group of people and my experiences were soured because of that. If I played with the right group of people, it could be an amazing experience, and I just hadn't really gotten that yet. But that being said, the components I think were good, but not great, but they were good. The game is very easy to teach, and it has so much replay value. You could play this game dozens and dozens of times and still not get a repeat of games that you'll be playing through. So this game, I do think, is a great concept, and I do understand why a lot of people like it. And like I said, I don't dislike the game. I think it's fine. If somebody would ask me if I would want to play this game with them, or if I would play this game with them, sure, I would play it. And if you are looking for a deduction game to play with maybe your game group or your family, your friends, then maybe I would check this one out. But if you're looking for a party game, this is what I might pass on. I'm going to give Codenames a 6 out of 10. So those were all my thoughts on Codenames. With all that said, what are your thoughts on it? Let me know in the comments. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. If you want to know my thoughts on more games, or if you want more videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more tutorials, reviews, and unboxings. Thank you all as always so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.